I was 3 years into a 5-year rigger contract on the lattice when I stopped counting the years and started counting visors. The lattice held station above the Voss pair, a solar collector platform strung with sail arrays, the size of parade grounds, translucent membranes stretched taut on carbon spars. When the twin suns cleared the horizon ring, the whole interior went white gold, every surface lit from 6 directions at once, no shadow anywhere to hide in. I liked that about the job. A man alone for years does better in the light than the dark. Darkness gives a mind places to hide things it shouldn't. Light doesn't let you forget where you left anything. My task was simple and endless. Walk the spars, replace burned collector cells, keep the array feeding power down the relay line to a colony 3 light months coreward that had nothing else. There was no crew rotation out that far, no relief shift, nobody to hand the work to when I got tired of it. Some men would have called that a sentence. I called it a schedule, because a schedule is a thing you can survive one day of at a time, and a sentence is a thing that survives you. The suits took a beating out there. Radiation-cooked polymer visors swapped every 4 to 6 months, whichever came first. I kept the old ones stacked in a locker like tree rings, and some mornings before a walk, I'd count them the way another man might count birthdays. Taped inside every visor, dead center where my eyes would find it in the first second of every shift, was a star chart. My niece Tamsin drew it the week before I shipped out, 7 years old. Wax crayon on cargo manifest paper, the Voss pair rendered as 2 lopsided orange suns with faces, and a crooked dotted line she'd drawn from our home system all the way out to a star she'd labeled, in careful backward capitals, Uncle Ren's star. It wasn't accurate. It wasn't close. I taped it in anyway, and every time a visor cracked or scorched past use, I peeled the drawing off with a fingernail, careful at the corners, and taped it inside the new one before I ever put the new one on. The paper was going soft by then. Tamsin's crayon had waxed thin in the fold lines, and her backward capitals were starting to blur, where my thumb had worried the same spot too many times checking it was still there. I knew the exact shape of that wear, the way you know the creak in your own front step. I could have told you, blind, which corner would need the gentlest hand, which fold was one bad peel from tearing clean through. That knowledge wasn't in the drawing. It was in me, in the years of small, careful handling, and no camera on the lattice could have taken a picture of it. The Thren wardens arrived on my 4th visor. I'd heard of them the way you hear of weather on a world you'll never visit. Catalogers, decommissioners, a courier species that traveled the collapsing trade lanes tallying what was left before it wasn't. 3 of them came aboard the lattice in a boxy gray shuttle, moved through my corridors without hurry, and told me, pleasantly, in a translated voice with no register at all, that the coreward colony had been resupplied by a shorter route, that the lattice's power feed was redundant, and that my contract, along with the platform itself, was to be closed out. They were thorough. They logged the spar counts, the collector yields, the maintenance ledgers going back to the day I'd first stepped aboard, and they did it without a wasted motion, 3 gray shapes moving through my corridors like water finding the low ground. They were kind in the flat way. A filing system is kind, not unkind, just entirely without the need to be anything else. And when the lead warden's optic swept my locker of dead visors and paused on the taped drawing in the newest one, it asked, with no more weight than it had asked about spar stress logs, whether I would like the artifact preserved. I said I already was preserving it. The warden explained, patiently, the way you'd explain a small mercy to someone who hadn't thought of it. Their archive held every mind that had ever interfaced with it. Forever, without decay, without fold lines, without a single wax stroke ever going soft. They could take one image of the drawing, 4 seconds, no more, and it would exist unchanged for as long as the Thren existed, which was, as far as anyone could tell, forever. The original, being paper, being crayon, being mine, would only get worse. Every year I kept it, it would fade a little further from what it had actually been. Logically, they said, the scan was the drawing, and the paper was just what the drawing used to look like. I told them no. They asked why, and meant it as a real question, not a courtesy. I found I didn't have a fast answer, so I gave them the slow one. I told them the drawing wasn't there to be accurate, it was there to be handled. Every time I peeled it off a dying visor and taped it into a new one, My hands did the same careful thing they'd have done if Tamsin were standing in the room watching, and that doing was the whole promise. Not the image, the doing. A perfect copy would sit in their archive forever, and require nothing of me ever again. That was exactly what was wrong with it. The lead warden looked at me. 3 of them do, all at once. A mannerism I never got used to, like being read by a room instead of a face, for longer than it had looked at anything else on the lattice. It asked whether I understood that the paper would eventually become illegible regardless of what I decided, that the wax would keep migrating in the fold lines until Tamsin's name was just a smear the shape of a name. I said I understood that better than it did, because I was the one watching it happen one visor at a time. It said then that my choice guaranteed the eventual loss of information I claimed to value. I told it the choice wasn't about the information. It said it did not have a category for what I'd just described, and it would need to think about where to file it. I said it didn't need to file it anywhere. That seemed to trouble it more than anything else I told them. They decommissioned the platform anyway, on schedule, because that part wasn't up for discussion. But the lead warden asked, before they sealed the reactor and pulled the sail arrays in for the last time, whether the lattice might be logged as a heritage marker rather than debris. I never learned why it mattered to a species with perfect memory, whether a dead platform kept its name. Maybe once you've seen a man refuse a perfect copy of something, you start wondering what else the paper version of things is quietly doing that the file can't. I came home. Tamsin was 14 by then, already talking about survey crew training, already taller than the version of her folded up in wax crayon in my locker. She didn't remember drawing it. I didn't tell her I still had it. Some promises work better kept quiet than kept spoken, and I'd already decided this one was mine to carry, not hers to be thanked for. 9 years after that, the lattice's heritage beacon pinged a routine ident to a survey ship running the old Vosper route on a mapping contract. I wasn't aboard for that part. I only heard it secondhand, months later, in a message that took its time reaching me, recorded by a woman with my sister's voice, and Tamsin's face grown into itself. She'd gone aboard alone, she said, because the rest of her crew had no reason to care about a decommissioned collector platform, and she did. She found my old locker still bolted where I'd left it, 4 dead visors stacked like tree rings, and in the newest one, taped dead center, a star chart on cargo manifest paper, soft at the corners, crayon waxed thin along every fold, 2 lopsided orange suns with faces, and her own backward capitals, blurred but legible, still calling some star out past the edge of the drawing line. She said she put her thumb on the same worn spot I'd worn it, without meaning to, the exact place, like her hand already knew. She didn't take it. She said she understood now why I hadn't let them scan it either. Some things you keep by touching them, not by copying them, and the copy was never the point. The point was that the hands kept coming back. I still think about the lead warden sometimes, filing and refiling a category that never closed. Somewhere in that perfect archive there's a 4-second window it never took, a scan it never made, a gap where a photograph should be. I like to think that gap is still bothering it. A species that forgets nothing had finally found the one thing worth losing on purpose, over and over, by hand, and it never did figure out where to put that in a ledger. I could have told them, some things aren't meant to be filed, they're meant to be held until your grip gives out, and then handed, still warm, to whoever comes back for them.